Hi, folks. This is Hal on the hot seat again, and I'm approaching very reverently our subject for today because a question was asked by someone on the website about some numbers that are at the end of the book of Daniel. Now, they're not new to me. I've looked at it before. I've sought to understand them, and yet I don't think anybody can understand them with absolute certainty, but I'm going to take a stab at it and to share this with you because I think it's very important in the whole framework of God's prophecy for the last days. Now, in the book of Daniel, it says this. Daniel had just received this enormous revelation about the events of the last days. He had received the outline of God's allotment of time to Israel to accomplish what he had called them as a nation and created them to be. And it was in the framework of a 70 sabbatical years. Now that means 70 times 7 years in Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27. I've mentioned this many times before. Most of you know that. And we know that allotment of time was divided so that the time clock that contained this allotted 490 years, which is 70 times 7 years, was brought to a halt when Israel rejected the Messiah. And it was all predicted in this prophecy. And it says that when they rejected the Messiah, that he would be cut off, which is a Jewish idiom for being put to death. The Messiah would be rejected, he would be put to death, and that he would have nothing of the things that were predicted of him. And then another historical event would take place. The actual allotment of time was cut off at 483 years, and right after that, Messiah is put to death. And then another historical event, the city of Jerusalem and the temple would be destroyed. And it said until the end, after that took place, there would be desolations and the people would be scattered. Now, the prophecy takes up again in chapter 9, verse 27 of Daniel, where it says that the last 7 allotted years to Israel would start again like a great stopwatch. The time that was still left on it would be pressed and it would give again, just count down again. When a prince that would be of the people who destroyed the city and the temple of Jerusalem, that when he would make a covenant with the people of Israel in the end times, that would officially start that time clock clicking down again. And that is a plot point in God's historical revelation about the last days for Israel. So the 7 years starts counting down when this covenant is signed guaranteeing Israel's security. They are allowed to begin to celebrate animal sacrifice again in the temple, because that's the only place that Israelites could ever make a sacrifice that was according to God's regulations, is on the site that the ancient temple had been. There have been 2 before. One was built in 1006 BC. It was destroyed in 586 BC by the Babylonians. The second temple began to be rebuilt in 416 BC. And it was built, and then when King Herod, in the time of Jesus, came along, he beautified that temple. Actually, he built it to a greater beauty in that era. So that was the second temple. The second temple, as predicted in Daniel 9:27, was destroyed in 70 A.D. by the Romans and under Titus and the 10th Legion of the Romans. Now, there has to be a third temple built because it says that sacrifice and offerings would be established again. And they'd have to have a temple for that to take place, or else it wouldn't be valid in the law of Moses. Now, these things we've talked about before, but there are some things that are said here at the end after Daniel's received all of this revelation that really piqued my interest. And there's what I want to focus right now. Daniel chapter 12, beginning with verse 9. I'm reading from the New American Standard Bible. He said, this is the revealing angel, "Go your way, Daniel, for these words are concealed and sealed up until the time of the end. Many will be purged, purified, and refined, but the wicked will act wickedly, and none of the wicked will understand. But those who have insight will understand. Those who have wisdom will understand." In other words, those who have been born again and have the Spirit of God, who are really seeking to understand God's prophetic word, would understand. And here's what he says. In verse 11, "And from the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days." Well, this is talking about that second plot point, when the abomination of desolation happens in the middle of that 7-year allotment of time. The first, it started, remember, with the covenant being signed with the Antichrist to guarantee Israel's security. And then in the middle of that 7 years, after 3.5 years, there would be an abomination that causes desolation. Now, that's something that's happened in history before in Israel, and it means something that would desecrate the Holy of Holies of the temple. That is the third part of the temple that is the rearward part where the Ark of the Covenant is placed. And so it says that there would be an abomination of desolation, and the sacrifices that had been authorized to start again would stop. So that'd be exactly in the midpoint of that 7 years. It's actually 1,260 days, because the biblical year is 360 days. It's a lunar year. So 1,260 days would be the point where the abomination of desolation would be set up. But the curious thing here is that it doesn't say 1,260 days. It says 1,290 days. Now we know that Jesus is going to return immediately at the end of the 1,260 days. That's the end of that 7-year period. And he's going to come back at a time when the war of Armageddon is raging and it's reached a peak, where if the Lord didn't return at the time in history he does, there would be no life left on this planet. And so we know that from comparing this with other prophecies, that will occur from the middle of the tribulation to the time he comes. That would be 1,260 days. But this has 1,290 days. Now that means that something's going on 30 days after he returns, in which the sacrifice and offering will not be accepted, not be instituted. So what goes on there? And then there's something even more curious that is said here. It says, "How blessed is he who keeps waiting and attains to the 1,335th day." 1,335 days. Well, that's 45 more days from 1,290 days. So that means from the time of the end of the tribulation and the return of Christ, actually until the 1,335th day would be an extra 75 days. And it says, "Blessed are they who are going to remain and attain to the 1,335th day." So what's going on there? Or is there something in Scripture that would tell us what that is? All right, I think there is. Now, first of all, what happens immediately after Jesus returns.